I remember the day like it was yesterday, though it's been decades. The sun slanted through the lace curtains of my small bedroom, painting golden lines on the floorboards. I was 24, naive, trusting. My sister, Helen, sat across from me, her smile wide, too wide. That smile hid something sharp, like glass beneath silk. "You'll never have to worry again, Joan," she said, her hand smooth as she slid the envelope across the kitchen table. "I'll handle it." I trusted her. I shouldn't have. That envelope held my inheritance, $310,000. Money my parents left for me. For my future. For my dreams. Helen said she would invest it wisely. She promised security. And then, just like that, she vanished. I searched for her for months, calling friends, relatives, anyone who might know where she'd gone. No one had seen her. Not even the banks had a clue. It was like she'd evaporated into thin air, taking my money, my trust, and a piece of my soul with her. The days blurred into weeks, the weeks into months. I cried alone in my empty apartment, clutching the envelope I would never see again. Every time the wind rattled the windows, I imagined her laughing somewhere, drinking champagne with my money, while I ate ramen and counted pennies. I swore to myself I'd rebuild. Not for revenge. Not yet. Survival first. Helen had taken a lot, but she hadn't taken my resolve. I worked 3 jobs, scrubbing floors, stacking shelves, and later, running small shops that barely kept the lights on. 30 years. I spent 30 years building something steady, something she could never touch. And all those years, I carried her betrayal like a shadow. Every family gathering reminded me. Every holiday, every chance I had to smile freely, was tinged with that emptiness. I wanted to scream at her name, to claw the world back from her hands, but I learned patience. I learned strategy. I learned how to survive without her, and with a quiet, simmering knowledge that one day, fate had a plan. Now, at 54, with gray streaking my hair and lines carving my face, I run a small market downtown. It isn't glamorous. It isn't the life my inheritance could have bought. But it's mine. Mine and mine alone. I know every corner of this shop. I know every customer. And I know that if life ever circles back around, I'd be ready. Little did I know. That circle had already begun to turn. It started with a knock on the door. I looked up from stacking canned goods. Outside, a boy, dirty, barefoot, no more than 19, stared back at me. His eyes were the color of storm clouds. His jacket was torn, and he held nothing but a tattered backpack. I think I'm looking for you," he said, voice trembling. I'm Helen's son. She said you'd help me." My heart froze. 30 years. 30 years I had lived without her lies, without her. And now, the past was standing there on my doorstep. And I had no idea if I could forgive it. I didn't know what to do. My hands trembled as I motioned him inside. The bell above the door jingled, loud in the quiet of my little market, as if announcing the start of a reckoning I wasn't ready for. He slumped against the counter, boots caked in mud, face pale and streaked with dirt. I studied him carefully. 19. Thin. Fragile, though there was a fire in his eyes I recognized from my own youth, the kind of fire you bury when the world keeps taking from you. You said you were my sister's son?" I asked, voice steadier than I felt. He nodded, swallowing hard. She left me. I didn't know where else to go. I heard you might help." A shiver ran down my spine. 30 years of anger, of betrayal, of painstakingly rebuilt trust and stability, collided in that moment. My sister had taken everything, my inheritance, my peace, and now her son was asking me to fill a void she had left behind. I wanted to turn him away. I wanted to slam the door and pretend he didn't exist. But something in his eyes, a quiet desperation, tugged at the part of me I had thought hardened beyond feeling. I remembered being young, vulnerable, alone. I had survived because someone believed in me. Could I deny him that same lifeline? I paused, searching for words I didn't have. "You can stay. For now. But don't get any ideas. I'm not your mother, and I'm not her friend." Relief washed over his face like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Thank you, ma'am." He was hungry, I could tell. Not just for food, but for guidance, for a sense of belonging. I gave him soup, bread, something warm to hold in his hands, and watched him eat. Every bite was cautious, careful, like he had learned not to trust the world when it fed him. I sat across from him, quiet, watching. My mind wandered. Could I really help him? Could I forgive the past enough to extend a hand? And worse, what if this was a trap? What if she had sent him here, using him as a weapon of guilt against me? Why now? I asked finally, breaking the silence. Why after all these years? He hesitated. I don't know. I had nowhere else. I heard stories about you, about the life you built. I thought maybe you could help me make sense of things. His honesty was a mirror. I saw myself, lost, young, betrayed, trying to navigate a world that had taken so much. And I realized something terrifying. My carefully constructed life, the one I had built brick by brick to shield myself from pain, was suddenly fragile again. Over the next few days, I watched him settle into the small space behind the counter. I gave him chores. I taught him to stock shelves, count change, greet customers. Each evening, we sat in silence, sharing fragments of our pasts, building a strange, fragile connection. But the shadow of my sister loomed over every conversation, every quiet glance. Her theft had started this, and her absence had brought him here. And I knew, deep down, that the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. One night, as I locked up and the streetlights flickered outside, I found myself staring at the empty doorway. What am I doing? I whispered to the dark. Am I helping him, or setting myself up for heartbreak? A gust of wind rattled the windowpane, and in the quiet, I realized, patience had always been my strength. But now, patience might not be enough. The days turned into weeks. I watched him, Eli, as I learned to call him, slowly shake off the dust of abandonment. He was awkward at first, spilling milk, dropping cans, fumbling the register. But he listened, learned, and soon, the market felt a little brighter. One evening, after closing, I found him sitting on the stoop outside, knees pulled to his chest, staring at the darkened street. You okay? I asked, crouching beside him. He shook his head. I don't know who to trust. Everyone's left me. I remembered that feeling. That hollow ache when the person who's supposed to protect you vanishes. I reached out, placing a rough hand on his shoulder. I know. I do. But trust is a choice. You choose who gets it. And right now, I'm choosing you. Eli's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in years, I saw vulnerability, not just the fear, but the hope. And against every instinct forged by decades of betrayal, I felt a spark of something I thought I'd lost: connection. We began sharing stories each night, small pieces of our lives. I told him about my sister, about the $310,000 she stole. His eyes widened in disbelief. That's insane. Why would she do that? Greed. Fear. Maybe both, I said. My voice hardened, remembering the long nights of worry, the lost opportunities, the weight of my stolen inheritance. People do things when they think they can take without consequence. But consequences, they always come. Eli listened carefully, his expression unreadable. Then he said quietly, I want to help you. If there's ever a way to fix this, or at least make things right. His words stirred something in me. A dangerous thought. Revenge. Not yet. Not without care. 30 years of patience had taught me that. But the seed had been planted. I could feel it take root. Meanwhile, he began to contribute. Small repairs around the market. Stocking shelves. Learning to manage customers. I watched him with pride. But the pride was shadowed by fear, the fear that helping him might open wounds I had spent decades bandaging. One rainy afternoon, I received a letter. No return address. The envelope was thick, expensive. My pulse quickened as I opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper. I know where you live. I know what you've built. It's time we spoke. My hands shook. The handwriting, familiar, impossibly so. My stomach twisted. Could it be her? Helen? After 30 years? The letter carried a weight I hadn't felt in decades. I looked at Eli, who was stacking cans nearby, oblivious. My mind raced. What was her intention? Was she desperate, repentant, or planning to strike again? I realized then that every moment I had spent building my life, every decision to protect myself, would be tested. And Eli, her son, was now caught in the middle. That night, I lay awake, listening to the wind against the windows. Memories of betrayal, of loss, of the quiet rage I'd carried, swirled around me. I felt the weight of 30 years in my chest. 30 years of patience, of endurance, of rebuilding. And now, the storm I had been waiting for had arrived. The letter burned in my hands like a brand. I read it again and again, each time feeling the chill of 30 years' anger rise in my chest. Helen was back. 30 years of silence, of my life rebuilt without her, and she had the audacity to reach out. I paced the market late into the night. The hum of the old fridge, the faint scent of coffee grounds, and the rain tapping against the windows were the only company. Every instinct screamed caution. I had learned the hard way: trust too easily, and you pay. Eli watched me quietly from the counter. I saw his curiosity, his concern. He had begun to feel like family, though I had not dared to say it. "Joan, what is it?" he asked softly. I paused, weighing my words. Someone from my past, someone who hurt me, and everything I built, she's back. And she knows where I am. He swallowed, nodding slowly. "Do you want me to help?" Something in his voice, earnest and unwavering, sparked a flicker of hope. I realized then that I didn't have to face this alone. For 30 years, I had carried the weight of betrayal myself. But now, Eli could be my partner, not just in business, but in facing the past. I began making notes, drafting strategies. The market became our base of operations. Shelves of goods, stacked meticulously by day, became a command center by night. I listed contingencies. What if she tried to manipulate me? What if she tried to take again? What leverage did I hold after all these years? Eli was surprisingly insightful. "If she thinks you're scared, she wins," he said. "You need to show her you're in control, even if you're not." His words were sharp, practical, and I realized he had inherited some of her cunning, tempered by desperation and humility. Together, we began devising ways to protect myself, the market, and the life I had built. But strategy was one thing, emotion was another. I could feel old wounds opening with every thought of Helen. Anger, betrayal, sorrow, regret, they swirled inside me like a storm threatening to break free. And yet, under that storm, a thread of something new emerged, a careful, quiet hope. Eli's presence reminded me that even in the aftermath of devastation, life could rebuild itself in unexpected ways. I also began testing him. Small tasks, trivial challenges, meant to see his loyalty, his resolve. Each time he passed, I felt my guard lower just a fraction. Slowly, cautiously, I started to allow myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could confront her together. But there was always that shadow, the knowledge that Helen's return could bring not only confrontation but exposure. 30 years of secrets, of plans carefully hidden, could unravel in an instant. I had to be meticulous, patient, smarter than her, faster than her. And deep down, I understood something crucial. Revenge wasn't just about taking what was lost. It was about protecting what remained. About ensuring that the people you care about, like Eli, never pay for the sins of the past. I looked at him, standing tall despite his youth and rough beginnings. "We're going to face her," I said quietly. "And we're going to make sure this ends on our terms." He nodded, eyes burning with determination. I felt a surge of pride, tempered with fear. For the first time in 30 years, I wasn't alone in this. The storm had arrived. And now, we were ready. The day she walked into my market, the air felt different, thick, heavy, like the calm before a storm. I was stacking canned goods, humming softly to myself, when the bell above the door jingled. I didn't look up at first, something in my gut warned me. And then I saw her. Helen. 30 years older, but with the same sharp eyes and the same smile that had shattered my life. She hesitated at the threshold, clutching a worn handbag, her gaze scanning the market like a predator sizing up her prey. "Joan," she said, her voice trembling, almost pleading. "It's me. I need your help." I froze, can in hand. 30 years of anger, betrayal, and calculated patience boiled beneath the surface. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I studied her, noting every wrinkle, every tremor, every sign of desperation. This was the woman who had stolen $310,000 from me. This was the woman who had vanished, leaving my life in ruins. Eli appeared beside me quietly, silent and watchful. He had learned quickly. The tension between us was electric. Together, we formed a silent barrier. One wrong move, and I knew Helen would try to manipulate, to charm, to take again. I've made mistakes, she continued, voice breaking.
I've been sick.
I have 3 months left.
Please. I don't have anywhere else to turn.
Her words hit me, but not the way she intended. I felt a wave of fury, yes, but also an unexpected twinge of sorrow.
She was frail. She was human.
And after 30 years, that frailty made her dangerous in a different way, pleading for forgiveness, relying on my compassion.
I stepped closer, forcing myself to look her in the eyes. 30 years, Helen, I said quietly. 30 years you destroyed everything I had. And now, you expect me to just forgive you?
She nodded, tears welling. I'm asking, just for help.
Don't make me beg.
Eli's hand brushed mine, a subtle gesture of support.
He understood, even at 19, the weight of what we faced.
I felt a surge of protectiveness, not just for myself, but for the life we had built, the bond we had forged over months of quiet trust and hard work. I took a deep breath, weighing my options. I could help her, risking everything, or I could refuse, ensuring the past stayed buried, but perhaps leaving her to die alone, consumed by her own choices. But I had spent 30 years learning patience, calculation, and control. I had rebuilt my life brick by brick, and I would not let anger blind me. Yet, I also knew that revenge, if handled carefully, could be satisfying.
Not for cruelty, but for justice.
For the balance that had been stolen from me all those years ago.
I'll help you, I said finally. But on my terms.
And only because there are things you need to understand before you die. Her relief was palpable, yet I saw the flicker of fear. She had underestimated me once. She would not do so again. That night, as the market closed and the streetlights cast long shadows, I began outlining the boundaries, the truth she had to face. Eli listened intently, his eyes flicking between us, understanding that this confrontation was more than just a reunion. It was the reckoning we had both been preparing for. I realized then that revenge was not just about taking from her, it was about protecting the life we had built, teaching lessons she had ignored for decades, and reclaiming the dignity she had tried to steal. And deep inside, I knew one thing. When Helen left my market that night, she would never be the same person who had walked away with my inheritance. The next morning, I awoke before dawn. The market was quiet, the soft hum of the fridge my only company. Helen was sleeping on the fold-out cot we'd reluctantly set up in the back, unaware of the plan I had begun to weave in my mind. I poured coffee and sat at the counter, staring at the faint light creeping through the windows. 30 years of betrayal, 30 years of rebuilding, 30 years of careful patience, it all led to this moment. And for the first time, I allowed myself a flicker of satisfaction.
Justice, finally, was within reach. Eli emerged, rubbing sleep from his eyes.
Are you ready? He asked.
His voice was calm, but I saw the fire in him. He understood the weight of this day. I am, I said.
But remember, this isn't about revenge for the sake of anger.
This is about accountability.
She needs to face the life she's left in ruins. When Helen stirred and opened her eyes, she blinked at us, confused but hopeful. Good morning, she murmured, weak but trying to smile.
I didn't expect to wake up to this. Sit down, I said, my tone gentle but firm. We need to talk.
She hesitated, then sat. I placed a file on the counter, a detailed account of her theft, the financial damage she caused, and the years of rebuilding I had endured. I saw the color drain from her face as she skimmed the pages.
I didn't know, she whispered. But I knew better. She had always known.
She had left with full awareness of the chaos she would create.
You did know, I said quietly.
And now, 30 years later, you expect me to simply let it go?
She shook her head. No, I'm dying. I have nothing left.
I leaned forward.
You have nothing because of your own choices.
But we're not here to punish your death. We're here to understand the life you've left behind, the lives you've touched, the people you've abandoned. Eli watched, silent but steady. Then he spoke, his voice firm. Mom left me, Joan. She abandoned me. You should know what that's like. Helen's hands shook. Tears spilled freely now, and I felt a strange pang, a mix of sorrow and vindication. This was the moment she could no longer hide behind her charm or her excuses. I was selfish, she admitted finally. I didn't think. I didn't care. I only thought of myself. I let the silence linger, heavy and deliberate. The truth had been spoken. And for the first time, she truly understood the weight of her choices. Then I did something unexpected. I offered her a lifeline, not her money, not her old life, but guidance. I would help her survive these final months, but only under my terms. Only after she faced every truth. Her face reflected shock, relief, and perhaps a hint of fear. Joan, why? Because vengeance isn't just about anger, I said. It's about surviving, teaching, and reclaiming your power. And because someone had to show you the consequences you've spent a lifetime avoiding. Helen's eyes filled with tears, but I noticed the tremor of respect forming beneath the fear. For 30 years, I had waited. And now, at last, she was learning. And though the past could never be erased, the present, and the future with Eli, was mine to protect. The weeks that followed were quiet but intense. Helen adapted slowly, humbled by the weight of the life she had lost and the lessons she had ignored for decades. I watched her carefully, making sure every moment of kindness she received came with accountability. Eli and I worked together in a rhythm that felt natural now. The market had become more than a business, it was a sanctuary, a proving ground, and a classroom for all of us. I taught him everything I had learned over 30 years. Patience, diligence, careful planning, and above all, the strength to survive. Sometimes, I caught myself watching them, mother and son, and I realized how strange life could be. 30 years ago, betrayal had ripped my world apart. Now, a family had been rebuilt in the shadow of that same betrayal. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't neat. But it was ours. Helen never regained the wealth she had stolen, nor did she deserve it. But she had gained something she had never had, a chance to make amends. She cleaned, helped in the market, and slowly earned a place, not back in my heart, but in the fragile ecosystem we had built. One rainy afternoon, Eli and I stood outside, watching her work in the garden behind the market. She was planting flowers carefully, hands in the soil, as if burying a past that had haunted all of us. Eli nudged me gently. You think she'll change? He asked. I smiled faintly, feeling the wisdom of years settle in my chest. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But she'll have to live with what she's done, and that's enough. We continued our routines, the rhythm of the market guiding us. Customers came and went, unaware of the storm that had once threatened to destroy everything. The lessons of patience, of careful calculation, and of the strength to forgive, or at least endure, were etched into every transaction, every conversation. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in gold and crimson, I closed the market and stood with Eli on the stoop. The wind carried the faint scent of rain-soaked earth, reminding me that life, like the soil, could always be renewed if tended carefully. You've taught me a lot, Eli said softly. About life, about people, about revenge and forgiveness. I nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. And you've taught me something too. That even after betrayal, even after 30 years, life can still surprise you. And people can still matter. As we watched Helen finish her work in the garden, I realized that revenge had not been about anger or punishment. It had been about reclaiming control over our lives, about protecting what we loved, and about teaching hard lessons without destroying the present. The storm had passed. But the echoes remained, a reminder that some wounds never fully heal, and some choices never fully leave us. And yet, in the quiet, I felt hope. For Eli. For the life we had rebuilt. For the possibility that even in betrayal, love and patience could create something lasting. I smiled, letting the wind brush my face. 30 years of waiting had led to this moment, and I finally understood. Survival, wisdom, and compassion, those were the true inheritances we could claim. And though the story of Helen, Eli, and me could continue, for now, the chapter was ours to cherish, to guard, and to live.